Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I am Leonard Maganza, the Chief Customer Officer at Syniti, and we are partnering with CDO Magazine and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Purvi Shah, the VP of Enterprise Big Data Platforms at American Express. Purvi, thank you for joining me. What was your journey? How did you find yourself here?
That is a fantastic question. And I would say, Leonard, my passion for data or, the love for my data started really in early 2000s when I was an intern. And my first internship job required me to actually go through reams and reams of search engine queries that people had inputted into the search engine. And at the end of the day, I was responsible for classifying it and sorting it to say, this is how many, queries that we got on a particular subject, or how many, misspellings that do we have of the most frequently used words and things like that. And that was really interesting. So as a young person, going through reams of this data really was eye-opening for me, because it allowed me to see how people think and how data can really be used as an asset.
It's interesting. I love this idea of, what's the motivation under the motivation, right? And oftentimes studying the data patterns, right? You get good root cause analysis. Hey, look, a lot of the stuff you've been discussing, let's be honest, right, is a little bit aspirational. Where do you think we are on the maturity curve of getting executives to treat the data as an asset and kind of leverage it in their strategic thinking? And what do you think we need to do next to move them up that maturity curve?
Yeah, so I would say, for me, I have been very lucky that Amex leadership already from day one, decades ago, realized the value of the data and what we needed to do with it. I think there were a lot of products that we created that were pioneers using the data. So the leadership at Amex is very supportive and understands that data is our asset, to ensure that we use it in the right way and responsible way to help our customers and improve and give the right level of services that they expect from us. So I've never had to sell in that we need to invest in in our data or data management capabilities across the board.
Okay, so in the last segment, I wanted you to work for me. Now I want to come work with you. But anyway, change over. Here's you alluded to the fact that you've got to have the right technology, the right methods, and you talked a little bit about how it. All the analysis really depended on good data quality, right? From the creation to the validation to the federation. What does best-in-class data management look like to you?
So I really believe the value of data improves the more we can do to understand it, govern it, and have the right level of access controls and make it reliant at the end of the day. And most importantly, make it so easy for the end users to use for permissible use cases, right? So it's the ecosystem of how we manage the data, all the way from the capture, collection, to how we organize it, to how we make sure that it is available for use. So for us, in order to continue on the vision of making sure that we excel at data management practices, I would say first is we are putting more enhancements, more tools together to ensure that we can capture the metadata, the ownership information. As you can imagine, Amex is a pretty big, organization where we capture data in multiple different places. So how do we make sure that we understand what that data means and who owns that data, and what does it do in terms of the value that it provides? The second one is focus on data security and protection. So we are in a heavily regulated industry. What that means is, we not only want to make sure that our customer feels trusted in the data that they have provided us to ensure that, we create security around it. But, it also means complying with regulations like GDPR, CCPA, and how do we continue to evolve our data management practices so that we can continue to stay compliant on that front. And then the last thing that I would say is the data quality piece of it. So there is a lot to be done on that front across the board. And how do we scale our data quality practices and measurements to make sure that we are able to capture the right anomalies and address them in a timely manner, so it doesn't end up causing a poor experience at the end of the day.
Yeah, in the prior section, we talked a little bit about, the customer experience, and you gave the example as American Express merchants. That makes complete sense, right? But there's also, to a certain extent, when you talk about the people who know the data best and all these tools, I think it really is to create the right experience, right? That people see the controls around data governance as benefiting them. So the people who know the data best inside your organization and creating it, right? Using the tools, right, to end up with good data quality and not trying to work around the system. I know you talked about all this governance, so I'm sure we try to keep that in place. Is that part of the purview and your role at American Express, or you're really focused more on the merchants, or internally to the data creators as well?
No, it's actually all of the data across all of the lines of business for American Express globally. So it includes merchant data, it includes customer data like you and I, it includes our commercial business in customer data as well. So think about it as a area where we make data available for the right purposes in organized manner to our end users. So it's like one-stop shop. And because we really don't want to have different silos, redundancies across the board of the same tools that are available in multiple different systems, because that actually really leads to an extremely poor colleague experience as well for us. And we've recognized that, where they have to go to multiple different systems, trying to reconcile the data, trying to stitch the information together so they can derive at the insight that they want. It takes up a lot of time, creates a lot of unsatisfaction, and more importantly, it delays time to market for the insights that we need in the world that we are in, where insights are demanded and expected real time. By having it decentralized, we know that it wouldn't really serve the purpose that we want to serve.
Hey, look, in 20 years of doing nothing but this, that's probably one of the most ambitious goals I've ever heard, that you just described, the depth and breadth of the data management you're doing. Not surprisingly, you've won awards in doing it. Not surprisingly, it was something that was demanded by you and your team, in a sense that you already highlighted American Express is in a regulated industry. It's also highly competitive too, right? So you have to have, factoring in both of those things. This was life and death, which is really, gets back to, hey, if you don't treat this as a strategic asset, right, you'll either be out of compliance or out of business, right? Because your competitor will.
Yeah, and I have a great example of that. When the pandemic started with, 2 years ago, we knew that our small businesses, our commercial businesses, our merchants all are going to need our help, right? So we knew that they were going to face very difficult times. And we used the data and all of the work that we have done over years to actually prepare the data, organize it, and all of that. And it became an asset for us because it allowed us to use that data to understand and be there for our customers when they needed us the most. So it wasn't just about when they're thriving that we're there for them and we have their backs, but it's really about making sure that when they are going to go through tough times, we recognize that. And we created products like financial relief programs. We created loan products for them so that we at American Express had their backs and helped them kind of get through the pandemic, which is still ongoing.
Hey, listen, you gave our listeners a lot of things to do. I'm going to ask you in this section now, one more time, tell me one of the things that you would never want to do again, right? A pitfall that maybe the listeners could avoid.
Yeah. So, I think it was in my early days, Leonard, where I was basically in the beginnings of creating data products. And one of the things that we made a big mistake on is not having all of the balance and controls in the right places as the data moved through the complex ecosystem that we had. And what that resulted into, unfortunately, is truncation of some fields, and that led to a poor marketing experience for our customers. And you can imagine what that would make you feel like as a customer, right? And so we recognized that very quickly. And so since then, what we have done is we have strengthened our balance and controls to ensure that the data that is moving between different parts of the data ecosystem still has the same amount of information and the value that we want to derive from it as it moves through. But more importantly, also enhancing our data quality practices and data quality tools so we can monitor and track and proactively get to the issue before it actually becomes an issue to the customers at the end of the day.
That makes sense. Purvi, first of all, thank you for your candor, and thank you for joining me today. And thank you, guests, for listening. And please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews.